My grandfather, he was an orphan on the outskirts of what was now the hood in Santiago. As we understand it, came from a farm out there. He didn't have a mother. He was raised by a grandmother who died when he was a boy, basically 10, 11 years old. And he got sent to an orphanage where they taught him how to make shoes. And when Allende came to power in the 70s as the socialist candidate from Chile, promising that the factory people who made shoes and other products that were for domestic and export, they would have an ownership share in what they were doing. And so Los Manríquez, we are very political people. My mother's side of the family being a Midwestern Republican, greatest generationers, served in World War II, like had a lot of good things to say about Henry Kissinger. My father's side of the family, the consequence of Henry Kissinger when Allende was assassinated. Right? Well, but the consequence of Henry Kissinger when Allende was assassinated and Pinochet was installed. So my mother went to Notre Dame while my father fought the dictatorship in Santiago. And these are Have
you ever heard your parents talk about Kissinger?
Oh yeah. My mother thinks Henry Kissinger is the worst. I mean, I'm not going to speak for my mother, but she hates Henry Kissinger. She observed what the dictatorship was as a green guy in Santiago who met my father and had me, right?
Right.
So it's like, there's
what
no
was she doing in Chile?
After college in Romance languages at the University of Notre Dame, she got a fellowship type thing to teach at a school for underprivileged kids that is in the neighborhood where my father grew up, right? My father was like the first in his neighborhood to go to get an associate's degree so he could be a teacher. And so he was kind of like a neighborhood legend in that sense, the one who made it up. And now he's a teacher. That was like a big deal, right?
Right.
And so when my mother got down there, she found this like dashing, smart coworker, and they went down to Patagonia. And my grandmother, mi abuelita, me dice que I was conceived at the foot of the volcano Osorno. My mother was pregnant when they came back from the hiking trip, right? And she's crazy. Like the one who remembers, because she was just like, she's just una abuelita, como sabe de todo, man.
Right, exactly.
And
isn't it crazy? Yeah, grandmas know like when you're pregnant and when you got pregnant and how it happened,
Yeah, well, I mean, like they were living with my grandmother at the time, like because it's, so like a blockhouse in the hood. And so she knew everything, and she always knows everything. So she's the ultimate source on like what happened like immediately before and immediately after I was born, right? And so I know I have all these cool details and stuff like that from La Abuelita, que lo sabe de todo. She's my only living grandparent left. I've known maybe 2 geniuses, maybe 3 in my life. People always say like truly geniuses, and she's one of them. Like she is the ultimate merchant, survivor, and wit. I actually did an internship type thing in Santiago when I was in college, and they sent me uptown to work at like a PR firm. I would tell them about Pudahuel, and they were just like, why would you go there last weekend? That's like the most dangerous place ever. But it's home to my father, right? So there's these two, like there's privilege and immigrant, white immigrant, mind you, because Chilenos for the most part in those days were white, were light skinned, right?
Right.
Nowadays, a lot more obviously Haitians, Colombians, and I think it's great because Chile has a very isolated culture. It's a very isolated nation, and the culture I think is in being enriched. And there's also like a lot of tensions as like a different subaltern like takes hold in some of these neighborhoods. But in the one where my father grew up, he and my uncles were known as the protesters who squared off against the dictatorship, were detained and tortured numerous times, and eventually exiled. My father to the United States with my mother.
Your dad was tortured?
Yeah, 4 times, beginning at 13.
Is he still with us?
Yeah. He's got the scars though, Each story, again, it's like journalistically, I've been covering this my whole life.
Yeah.
I just now I'm reporting the news in the capital, right?
When did you come from Chile? How old were you?
I was 10 months old. If I ever write a memoir, I think the title should be Barely an Immigrant, because I was literally a baby when I arrived in Miami.